All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know attendees are still joining us. We are so happy to have you all here today for today's webinar, Pedal Power for Public Servants, Building Government Workplaces for Better Biking. My name is Amelia Neptune. I'm with the League of American Bicyclists, and we are really thrilled to host you all today. So thanks so much for being here. I also want to wish you all a happy National Bike Month, and this week is National Bike to Work Week, and this Friday is National Bike to Work Day. So whether you celebrate this week and this month or some other time of year, happy National Bike Month, everybody. And I'll be talking a little bit more during my presentation about how you can celebrate Bike Month even more than you already do, perhaps. Just some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. We are recording this and we'll be posting the recording on our YouTube channel and at bikeleague.org/webinars. So you can look us up, Bike League, on YouTube. Closed captions are available and you should be able to turn them on or off from the bottom menu of your Zoom screen at any time. And attendees who are watching live, please feel free to put questions in the Q&A box at any time. Attendees are muted and off screen, but we welcome your questions and we should have plenty of time for Q&A at the very end. Now I'm excited to introduce our speakers and give you a rundown of what we'll be discussing today. So I'm Amelia Neptune, again, the director of the Bicycle Friendly America program. And we'll also be hearing from Caroline D'Angelo, the acting Chief Sustainability Officer for the U.S. Department of State, as well as Ryan Burkett, Director of Communications for People for Bikes, and Callie Crumpos, Senior Organizing Manager for the Washington Area Bicyclist Association. And the original inspiration for today's webinar came about in a conversation with the League and WABA and People for Bikes talking about federal agencies and how important they are, especially here in DC, where a couple of us on the webinar today live, to getting more people on bikes, getting those federal workplaces to become more bike friendly. And so in that spirit, to welcome all of you who are public agencies at federal agencies, we have a special welcome from Congressman Earl Blumenauer, who wanted to wish you all a happy Bike to Work Week and welcome you to the webinar. So I'm going to hand it over to him for just a moment.
Hello, I'm Congressman Earl Blumenauer, representing Oregon in Congress. I'm also the founder of the Congressional Bike Caucus. In a minute, you'll hear from some fantastic advocates about the benefits, the many benefits of biking to work. But first, I want to take a moment to say that Congress is on your side. As federal employees, you have some of the best biking opportunities at your fingertips in the DC area. And today, it's easier than ever to bike. Last Congress, we passed unprecedented funding for bike and pedestrian projects in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. This legislation nearly doubled funding for transportation alternatives to $1.5 billion per year, unlocking new funding for bike share programs. It created a new grant program for building active transportation routes, funded more than 500 Safe Streets planning grants to improve biking in communities all across America. You're living during the high water mark of federal support for biking. When I first got to Congress, I was one of 2 members who regularly commuted by bike around the Capitol. While bike commuting was a curiosity back then, today it's a different story. There's widespread and affordable bike share program, people taking bike parking seriously, and connected bike networks that grow each and every year. In fact, one of my proudest accomplishments is getting bike lanes built along Pennsylvania Avenue. Countless federal employees now use them to bike to work down one of our nation's most iconic streets. Getting around on 2 wheels connects us to each other and to our communities, while it allows us to burn calories instead of fossil fuel. I hope you will consider making your next commute by bike. I'll see you out there.
All right, thank you, Congressman Blumenauer. So as he said, there are lots of benefits to biking, and I'm sure if you're on this call, you already know this, but just in case you need some fuel to help convince a decision maker in your workplace, just a reminder that bikes are a simple solution to so many complex problems that we have, from environmental, the carbon reduction of biking versus driving, even compared to electric vehicles. The safety benefits, studies have shown that cities that are more bike friendly are actually safer for all road users. The economic benefits, many studies are showing that bicycling is actually great for local businesses. And of course, the health benefits. Even the CDC has recognized active transportation and physical activity through community design as one of their key strategies in their Active People, Healthy Nation initiative, which is a national initiative to get 27 million Americans to be more physically active by 2027. So biking, again, accomplishes all of this. And for the workplace, the benefits keep going, attracting and retaining employees, improving health and lowering health, decreasing absenteeism, increasing productivity, and on and on. We've got studies from employers in our bicycle friendly business program that show that things like bike to work incentives pay off financially in terms of healthcare costs, lowering parking costs, et cetera. And of course, for the individual, the same thing is true. All of those health and wellness benefits, as well as financial benefits, for any individual who's choosing and able to change their commute from driving to biking. The benefits just keep going. So that's the goal for today, is to help you all reap these benefits by making your workplace at public agencies all across the country to become more bicycle friendly. So I'm going to kick us off with an introduction to the League and the Bicycle Friendly Business Program as a tool that you could use in your workplace. So just in case you haven't heard of us before, the League of American Bicyclists is a national nonprofit leading the grassroots movement for safer streets. We've been at this work for a really long time. We were originally founded as the League of American Wheelmen in 1880, but our mission today continues in a very similar vein to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. We do this through a number of programs, many of which I'll be talking about today, including education, policy, research, data collection, supporting local advocates, hosting our annual conference, the National Bike Summit, where we bring grassroots bike advocates from all over the country to meet with their members of Congress and advocate for the kinds of improvements that Earl Blumenauer was speaking about a moment ago. And then finally, the program that I run is the Bicycle Friendly America program, where we evaluate and give feedback to help improve states, communities, businesses, and universities to make them better places for biking. You can learn more about all of these programs on our website, and I'll put some links in the chat if you're curious to explore our Bicycle Friendly America Awards map or any of the programs that I won't be talking about today. But I'm primarily going to be talking about our Bicycle Friendly Business Program, which is really a twofold program. It's about recognition for the things that your workplace might already be doing and feedback to give you the tools to improve. So everybody gets feedback, including survey results from your employees and feedback from a national committee of reviewers. And those that earn the awards and meet the criteria can get awards bronze through platinum. We mean businesses in a very general sense when we use the term business. So we really mean businesses of all shapes and sizes. So we've got churches, we've got elementary schools, we have an ambulance provider. And I love these three photos as just a showcasing of how each of these places can be really different and how there's no one size fits all, for example, of what good bike parking looks like for any given workplace. It really does matter what kind of workplace this is, where it is. And so we try to use the BFB program to help all of these unique business types find the solutions for them. In fact, last week, we just announced our latest Bicycle Friendly Business Awards, 56 new and renewing BFBs, and that included a dairy farm, a preschool, some food co-ops, a soup kitchen, several Fortune 500 corporate headquarters, and several public agencies as well. One of my favorites to give a shout out to is the county commissioner in Harris County, where Houston, Texas is, Rodney Ellis. His office has been a bicycle friendly business for years, and they just moved up to platinum level recognition. So I want to congratulate all of our new and renewing BFB awards from last week. I'll put that announcement in the chat just in case you're curious, but especially those public agencies. And this is an infographic from a publication we made last year about all the different kinds of public agencies that are in the Bicycle Friendly Business Program. So we've got a lot of cities and towns, counties, regional planning agencies. We also have public schools, public health agencies, statewide departments of transportation, a lot of federal agencies, both in DC and all over the country. We even have a airport. Tampa International Airport is our one and only airport BFB. So it really runs the gamut, both in terms of size, location, and all of that, just to say that the stories that you'll hear today can be applicable to your workplace, regardless of where you're working. And hopefully you'll hear some ideas that are things that you can apply at your workplace, or convince the leadership at your workplace to apply in the near future. So what does it take to earn the Bicycle Friendly Business Award? We have a criteria framework that we call the 5E framework, and our application is actually organized around these 5 E's, and they are engineering, encouragement, education, evaluation, and planning, all through the lens of equity and inclusion. In addition to filling out the application that, once again, is organized around these topics, we also have this survey component that I mentioned earlier. We'll give applicants the survey and ask them to distribute it to their employees, or if they're something like a coffee shop or a bike shop, they can share it with their customers as well. And this gives those employers direct feedback from the employees as well. So they're not just hearing from us saying, you really need to improve your bike parking. They can hear directly from their employees in an anonymous aggregate survey saying, wow, it's great that you have showers, but nobody knows about them, or they never have hot water, or those kinds of details that really don't always show up on paper on the application, but employees are able to shine a light on those kinds of problems. And the highlights that are worthy of awards and celebrating. So even if your workplace isn't ready to apply to be evaluated and recognized as a bicycle friendly business, the application is really designed as a menu of options and ideas, and hopefully a source of inspiration. So you can find the online application on our website. I'll put that link in the chat as well. And you can also download a PDF version of the application, and just consider that, like I said, a menu of options, and hopefully a source of inspiration. Now, the next several speakers on today's webinar are going to be focusing on federal agencies. So I wanted to spend a little time talking about some of the local and regional and state level public agencies that have participated in the BFB program, and just share some highlights and ideas of things that we've seen them do. So I'll start out with Cuyahoga County, Ohio, which just received its first BFB award in our latest announcement last week. And something I love that they did is they worked with their local bike advocacy group, Bike Cleveland, to do a facility audit of their county building. So they looked at things like bike parking and access, and the ramp to get the bike into the bike room, e-bike charging, fix-it stand, air pump, all of those things. And they did it for their main building. They're talking about doing it for their other county buildings as well, so that no distant office gets neglected in this work. And if you have the equivalent of Bike Cleveland or WABA, where Callie will be speaking from, in your community, I'd encourage you to reach out to those local advocates and find out how you could partner. And maybe they can do things like a facility audit, or just offer you some guidance, or maybe they'll partner with you on some of the programming that I'll talk about in a moment. So if you don't know about local advocates in your area, I'm going to put a link to our local resources map in the chat. And this is just a place where you can look up local bike organizations, bike clubs, bike shops, anyone in your community who might be a good partner for some of the kinds of work that I'm talking about today. I will also say for Cuyahoga County, to that equity and inclusivity component of the application, a detail that I really loved on their application was that they very intentionally placed their lockers and their showers and changing rooms right next to the bike parking, because we've heard from some BFB employers that having to walk across the workplace floor in your kit or your bike gear all sweaty after you parked your bike to get to the showers is a real deterrent for people. So that was one thing they did, was place everything together very intentionally. And then I also built their locker rooms and their shower stalls to be gender inclusive. So they have completely private showers and changing rooms that lock that are not specific to a gender, so that somebody that identifies as non-binary doesn't have to choose between the women's locker room and the men's locker room. That's a detail that I really love and appreciate, and just wanted to share that for anyone who might be in the situation where they're able to, influence new showers or locker rooms that are being built for your workplace. Okay, another example, Houston Galveston Area Council, which is another existing BFB that renewed in our latest round. They moved up in award levels as well. They have been participating in Bike Month and partnering with their local advocacy organization, Bike Houston, to do a Bike Month challenge for employers all across the city of Houston and the whole area. But they also looked internally and used Love to Ride, which is the platform you see the screenshots from, to have their individual employees track their ridership and their rides, and have a lot of fun celebrating each other's rides and a little healthy competition. So if that's something that might interest you, we actually did a webinar on this exact topic just a couple of weeks ago, so I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. And if you want to quickly take a photo of the QR code on the screen here, it actually might be too small, but we'll share these slides afterwards, and you can download the Love to Ride app. And even you as an individual, it doesn't have to be an entire workplace program, but this is something that workplaces and groups of individuals or just single individuals could do during Bike Month. For a little bit more Bike Month inspiration, another regional planning commission in southern New Hampshire worked with their statewide partners, including their statewide bike advocacy group and other regional planning commissions around their state, to create a statewide Bike Month celebration. They created a poster and graphics and images for people to use all across the state, and they got their governor to declare May as the statewide Bike Month in New Hampshire, which was really great. And if that's something that seems like you might want to do it in your area, if you're somewhere that isn't already celebrating and promoting Bike Month and Bike to Work Day, we do have some really awesome resources on this topic, including a Bike Month guide, which includes sample proclamations. So if you wanted to approach your mayor or your governor to do a proclamation, you don't have to reinvent the wheel to do that. So you can find a sample proclamation in our Bike Month guide. It also might be the case that when your community celebrates Bike Month is a little bit different from National Bike Month or Bike to Work Day, and that's okay. We know that in Alaska and Colorado, they celebrated in June. In Florida, they celebrated in March. So we encourage local folks to celebrate it whenever it makes sense for you. And yet another regional planning commission that's in the BFB program found that their community, which they were the lead organizers of the Champaign County Bike to Work Day, their community found September to be the best time to celebrate as a community. But their workplace found out that late May was the perfect time for them, and they didn't have to necessarily try to coordinate with everyone else in the community. Since it's a college town, there's graduation in May, it can be really complicated. So they just separated the two, and they have their community-wide Bike to Work Day one point in the year and their internal Bike to Work Day another part. So that's another option for any of you who might be involved in planning at the community level or the regional level. All right, I'm going to talk real quickly about education. City of Fitchburg, Wisconsin, some of the things that they do are, have maps and information for people looking to learn about bike safety or where to bike in their community. And that's those were some of the things that got them the BFB award for their civic campus as a city. And bike education isn't just for people riding bikes, it's also for drivers and motorists. So something the city of Little Rock, Arkansas did was create a Little Rock Friendly Driver Certification Program, which was inspired by a similar program in Fort Collins, Colorado. They actually learned about it at the National Bike Summit. And they launched their own program in 2018, and they have now certified all of their public works fleet drivers, over 180 people, to get this training on how to share the road as a motorist with bicyclists. And then they also offer that training for private companies with fleet drivers as well. So I'm going to put a couple links in the chat once again. to learn more about that program in Little Rock, as well as the League has a bicycle-friendly driver training, so you don't have to create your own. But if you have professional drivers on staff, this is a really great way to engage them in this conversation about bicycle-friendly roads. I also want to give a shout out to some of our partners in this movement, America Walks. They have a Safer Fleet Challenge for public agencies, and I'd encourage you to explore that. That's the third link in the chat that I just sent. Okay, I want to reiterate that you really don't have to reinvent the wheel on all of this. We have a lot of great curriculum at the League through our Smart Cycling program, and we train and certify individuals to teach that curriculum. So these are things that workplaces can use and individuals can use. So if you're working as an internal advocate to try to make your workplace or your community more bicycle friendly, consider looking into the educational resources that are out there, and you could even become a League cycling instructor, or go back to our local resources map that I shared earlier and find the League cycling instructors in your community. So once again, I'm going to put a few links in the chat there. So I'll close out my part of the presentation just to say, if you're curious to learn more, I'll put the links for the BFB program in the chat. I'm happy to answer more questions. We do have an application deadline coming up for BFB on June 5th. And we actually have a discount for during Bike Month, and I'll put that in the chat as well. We do have an application fee for the BFB program that's on a sliding scale based on the size, the number of employees. But public agencies are all the smallest tier, which is a $50 application fee, regardless of the size. So I want to make sure you all know that. You don't have to pay more if you're a giant public agency. We really want you to apply and use all the tools in the program. And now I am really excited to hand it over to Caroline from the US State Department, because they are actually a silver level bicycle friendly business and doing really awesome things internally. And so Caroline, I will hand it over to you. Thanks.
Great, well, thanks, and hello, everybody. Great to be here. I am a bike enthusiast myself, so I commute by bike. Recently got an e-bike, which even made my commute even better. So I'm excited to be here, and I've been in what we call the Greening Diplomacy Initiative, which is essentially our sustainability team at State for 10 years with a couple of side quests. So I've been watching the growth of our bicycling program, both in Washington, D.C., where we have a lot of facilities, but we actually have facilities around the United States, and then, of course, the embassies and consulates around the world in about 270 cities. So there's a lot of mayors and local bike infrastructure that vary, and we get to do a lot of what I like to call two-wheeled diplomacy. So today I'll talk about sort of where we are and how we got there. And I'm also happy to say my colleague Sean Crago is on the line, who runs our employee affinity group for biking. So Sean, feel free to jump in anytime. And we may have some other colleagues on the line. But so I mentioned, we have Greening Diplomacy Initiative, or GDI. That's our overarching umbrella sustainability initiative. So biking, of course, is an important part of that. And we are focused on becoming a net zero carbon emissions organization by 2050. So commuting is scope 3. So we are looking at that. But more than that, we love to be a good neighbor wherever we are. We'd like to walk the walk on pollution and on environmental impact. So to me, biking and alternative transportation is a great way to go. So that is why I'm involved, because it sort of relates to my portfolio as Chief Sustainability Officer. But we also have a lot of people across the department that have a role to play. So our Bureau of Administration is the bureau that oversees our domestic real property portfolio, and they have the Deputy Assistant Secretary is a huge biker there. So there's a lot of advocates in high places, which is really helpful. They actually use the infrastructure. And Amelia was talking about the different types of infrastructure that different companies have. And so it's really helpful when the when the senior people with responsibility and budget over bike infrastructure actually use it, so that they can see, they know if the bike shower is dirty or not functioning. So we, in our HST, which is our headquarters building in DC, we have free bike showers. And I hadn't thought about the gender aspect, so I'm glad you brought that example up. But right now they are gendered, but they're free, which is helpful. And that's really nice. In some of our other buildings around the National Capital Region and around the United States, we also have free bike showers or jogger showers, however you want to get to work and you need to shower off. We do try when possible dealing with leases and landlords to put that in there. It's not always possible, especially when you're overseas. Sometimes you just kind of have to take what you can get that is safe and available. But I love when I see that as an offering in a lease. So I'll talk a little bit more about our actual infrastructure, but one thing I wanted to make the point is trying to tie biking to our actual mission, which is diplomacy. We're trying to represent the interest of the American people around the world. And that, of course, includes climate and environmental issues. And so what I love is that some of our diplomats around the world have done, like I said, two-wheeled diplomacy. And it's been decades of this. Just a couple of examples. In South Korea, there was a team from the embassy that rode across the country to raise awareness about their sustainability and climate goals. In 1998, back in the day, we had a team go across Vietnam. And then we have lots and lots of people around the world, employees around the world, who participate in Bike to Work Day or International Car Free Day, or do their own types of car-free days like Amelia was talking about. And it's just a really wonderful way to engage with the city, and if it's the capital, the foreign ministry and other embassies and other organizations. So we also have something called the Eco Capitals Forum, which is when we partner with a city government and a foreign ministry and other embassies in a given city, and we collaborate on sustainability event. So in Bangkok, the embassies all partner with the city government, and they do International Car Free Day, and there's a huge fleet of bikes that goes around the city, which is fabulous. Here in DC, we haven't done it a little bit because of COVID, but we used to have the embassies all come together and we bike together. And it's just really kind of a wonderful way to raise awareness about what infrastructure exists, and just invite people to try it, because I think that's one of the biggest things. If you don't try it, you don't know that it's possible to actually bike in a lot of these places. So Bike to Work Day is a big one for us, and we actually have, in America it's on Friday, but we're celebrating it on Tuesday next week, because we find that a lot of people telework on Fridays, which is a great way, it's less traffic on the roads, but sometimes people will actually come in just because of the Bike to Work Day, but we want to try to get as many people as possible. So we have our own little celebration on Tuesday, May 21st. And we have, bagels and coffee, and Go DC Go has maps and information. And it's really a wonderful way to just build community. And that's something that I think is a really important part of infrastructure, as Amelia was saying, is you've got the physical infrastructure of the bike showers, place to park your bike, and importantly, if you're in a city that has bike shares, bike share infrastructure, and then you've got the kind of social infrastructure of the community biking. What's been interesting is, and I don't know if it's just because, diplomats are adventurous people, but we do have a lot of bikers. It's really great. And so a couple of years ago, I was approached by folks who wanted to use Capital Bike Share, but noticed that Capital Bike Share, our DC bike share, they couldn't get enough bikes. There were always, the docks seemed empty. So I worked with DC government and Go DC Go and WABA and Capital Bike Share, and we were able to add more docks around at our different facilities, and it's really useful. People love it. Another kind of interesting thing on infrastructure is we actually used to have a bike share program at our headquarters before Capital Bike Share was a thing, and we retired it about 8 years ago because we didn't need it. Capital Bike Share was better. But over in Geneva, we have a electric bike sharing program, and that's so that people don't have to use the motor pool, have cars take them to different meetings. They can use the e-bikes. So it's interesting because it depends on where you are and what the purpose is as to whether, what infrastructure you might need. And in my own organization and different facilities, we need different things. So with the social side, we've had various levels of formality around employee affinity groups. We've had listserv, we've done events. And what we have right now is a Microsoft Teams, where people can sign up for domestic and then overseas as well. And it's really great. They work on, it's all volunteer, so that's maybe the limiting factor. You're doing it as a if you can get it in. But we hope to continue working this into people's actual duties to support the bike infrastructure. I mentioned working with landlords and real property managers for installing and maintaining bike infrastructure. So that's been really key, and working with local organizations and governments has been a fantastic way just to get people interested. And the last thing I'll just mention is like the importance of doing the senior sponsors. So whether it's our CIO, for example, is Bikes Every Day, and finding those people who really do love to bike is really helpful. So our former secretary, Carrie, biked, avid biker. And so that was a really helpful hook. And so you can find them in random places of these senior sponsors for biking infrastructure at your organization. So with that, I think that is it for me. And I'll turn it back over to Amelia. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caroline. That was awesome. And just reminded me of all the reasons you all are a silver level bicycle friendly business. So thanks for your leadership and presentation on that. All right. Now I'm excited to turn it over to Ryan Burkett at People for Bikes. He'll be talking about some of their programming and services. Thanks, Ryan. Take it away.
Thanks, Amelia. Let me share my screen here quick. Get this presentation mode. All right, so my portion of the presentation, I'm hoping to touch on some low-hanging fruit opportunities. So a lot of times there's these like huge, when you're trying to create a work culture that promotes riding bikes, that can be like, feel overwhelming because you have like the infrastructure of like developing the showers and the locker rooms and all of this other stuff that may cost money, but there's a ton of like pre-work that you can be doing that's like low-hanging fruit, costs little to no money, but really accelerates the ride to work culture. So that's what I'm gonna be covering today. Before I get into the content, just wanted to introduce you to People for Bikes quick in case you aren't familiar. People for Bikes is the bicycle industry's trade association and a national advocacy organization. This year in 2024, we're celebrating our 25th year of anniversary, which we're really excited about. So if you want to learn more about our organization and the different initiatives that we're doing to help make the US the best place in the world to ride a bike, please tune in to our website, peopleforbikes.org. We're working through we pursue our vision work of making the US the best place in the world to ride a bike through three main pillars. Those are developing world-class infrastructure, helping craft model legislation across the country that is pro-bike, and then also increasing participation through participation programming, similar to this call, talking about how to get more people riding bikes, the fun stuff. So a few of the low-hanging fruit opportunities that your organization could pursue to help you get more people interested in riding bikes. The first one is encouragement. So a lot of times staff are kind of unsure if the organization supports active transportation as a lifestyle choice. There's a lot of people who perceive those who ride their bikes to work as not contributing to the overall work culture. So it's important that the organization as a whole really celebrates that lifestyle choice. So I kind of have a good, better, best here of different ways that your organization can support active transportation as a lifestyle. So a good option would be to celebrate participation at staff meetings or through email. So encouraging if you have like a weekly or a monthly all staff meeting or email newsletter to be able to celebrate folks who are participating in active transportation through those means. And that like public recognition just illustrates to even people who aren't choosing that commute choice as a, hey, this is something we support. We want to see you be successful in this. Feel free to give it a try if it's something that's of interest to you. A better alternative would be to like establish a prize structure. So actually like reward the folks who are choosing that choice of commuting. And that can be done fairly inexpensively through a raffle format. So the example I provided here is like a national park pass. You could buy a national park pass. One park pass is usually like $50 or less. And then raffle that off to those people who rode to work in the last month, for example. So a really cheap option, but it shows that the organization is actually investing in the folks and rewarding the folks who are choosing to arrive by bike, which is really cool. And then the best is obviously to pay staff for choosing active transportation options. This is obviously the gold standard, which is actually rewarding staff every time they ride their bike. That is a lot more costly, but it does indicate that the organization really believes in active transportation and thinks that that's a preferred mode of transportation. So the outcome, if you're able to implement these good, better, best scenarios, is the organization's brand affinity increases for the staff members, and they'll be actually talking about all the cool benefits they get at work and telling them to their family and friends, which hopefully will generate new employees in the future. The second low-hanging fruit opportunity is community. Learning something by yourself. I'm sure everybody has tried to do this and it can be really intimidating and difficult. So creating an environment of community where folks can learn from each other is the best way to increase participation in biking. So the good scenario here would be to host some lunch and learns, similar to what we're doing today, to share best practices of ways to get this done. A better scenario would be to create affinity groups. My previous employer used to have like a bike committee where we would actually come together and kind of share in that passion for the activity and figure out ways to keep staff engaged through like bike to work week or bike month activities. Those are all really fun ways, but having like a dedicated cohort of individuals who can like champion that initiative is a really great practice. And then the best case scenario would be actually organizing group rides from work to popular destinations to like go out and get ice cream or go to a concert after hours. But actually organizing group rides so people feel like they can come and they're not riding by themselves, but surrounded by coworkers who also love to ride their bikes. And then the outcome, if you are able to implement these, is that staff feels safe learning and asking questions to pick up the new skill set. The third and my final one that I'm going to share today is going to be flexibility. And this one, I feel like this is one of my favorite points that a lot of people don't consider is how flexible you are in allowing folks the time and the space to be able to practice something new. As you're learning how to like create a new pattern, if you've been taking single occupancy vehicle trips to work and you're trying to figure out like, when do I need to leave my house if I'm riding my bike? And what does it look like when I show up at work? And providing like a grace period so that when people show up, they don't need to be at their desk at 8 o'clock, but knowing that if they're there at 8:15 or 8:20 because they needed a shower or cool down or get their bike put away, whatever it may be, having that grace period built in just shows the employer's intention for wanting folks to choose that transportation method. Another great example of an organization really supporting riding bikes as a lifestyle choice is to create like flex time. So if it's a beautiful day out and everybody wants to go out for a group ride together, giving them the space to take an hour and 30 minutes instead of an hour lunch That really shows and indicates the employer's awareness that, hey, this is something that's really cool, makes our staff happier, healthier, and when they are here, they're more engaged. So just being able to be flexible in that way. And then the best case scenario here, and this is something that Fuel for Bikes has actually implemented, which I really value, is we're actually rewarded as a staff to continue riding bikes outside of work hours. So not just riding our bikes to work or riding our bikes home, but riding our bikes on Saturday and riding with our kids and riding to get groceries and riding to go get coffee with friends. But every time we take a bike ride, Fuel for Bikes actually rewards us with a cash payout up to a certain limit, but it really indicates the organization's belief that the bicycle can solve a lot of the world's problems and is engaging us and encouraging us to continue that lifestyle choice. So that's a kind of best in class scenario, but I think it's really important to highlight that if we're just encouraging people to ride their bikes to work, it's going to be hard for them to go from not riding their bikes at all to now riding in traffic, trying to figure out how to get to work on time. So giving them the flexibility to ride when they want to ride and where they want to ride is just a kind of a best case scenario to encourage this as a lifestyle choice. And the outcome here is by lowering the stress of time constraints, staff are empowered to pursue an active lifestyle and practice company values in their free time. So those 3 points were taken from a blog that I wrote. If you want to see kind of all of the low-hanging fruit opportunities, all the low-cost and no-cost ways that you can encourage bike culture at work, go ahead and scan this QR code. And I know Amelia is going to be sending around the slide deck afterwards. You'll have this QR code at your fingertips that you can scan and kind of take a read of that blog. But there's a ton of good stuff in there about ways to just like really encourage that bike culture at work. And that's it. That's it for my slides. So Amelia, I'll stop sharing here and send it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. That was great. And I love the concept of the low-hanging fruit because that's often exactly what people need. Callie, I'm going to hand it over to you now for the local advocacy perspective. And before she speaks, I just really want to emphasize that those of you who are at workplaces in DC, you are so lucky to have WABA in your backyard. And those of you who are in other cities across the country, once again, please do look up your local bike advocates through our local resources map at the League so that you can find and connect with the equivalent of Callie, who hopefully exists wherever you are. So Callie, I'll hand it over to you now. Thanks.
Appreciate the praise, but I am just so excited to be a part of today's discussion. As you heard, I am Callie Crumpos with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, but want to start out with just a broad overview. So many of you, all of you, support government agencies. And I also want to make a plug for how engaging with your local organization helps build towards the broader culture, making it safer, more accessible, more inclusive, and more fun to bike. So we're probably all familiar with the 4 types of bicyclists, or the generalized terms for the approximate segments of a population who require or want different things in a bikeway facility. So we've got the strong and fearless folks, people who are willing to bicycle with limited or no bicycle specific infrastructure. Those who are enthused and confident, people willing to bicycle if there's some bike-specific infrastructure. Interested but concerned, those are folks who are willing to bicycle if there's high-quality bike infrastructure. And then the final group, no way, no how. These are folks who are not going to ride regardless of the infrastructure that's there. So when this was a study that was completed in the early 2000s, as they looked at the results coming back from metro regions across the US, found out that the majority of responders, about 60%, identified as interested but concerned. And those folks are our target for a local biking organization. Of course, there's some variances across these groups by region, but what we know is that if we want to make biking accessible, inclusive, convenient, we need to focus on the needs of those who are interested but concerned, the majority of our population. So if we make those bike networks safe and comfortable enough for that cohort of people, then more people will use it, and that starts a feedback loop. At WABA, as a local biking organization, we're thinking about how do we contribute to that loop by focusing on 2 major motivators: helping people feel more comfortable and confident biking, and working to improve and better connecting big bike infrastructure, along with a long list of additional supports. So just a little bit about WABA. The Washington Area Bicyclist Association was started in 1972. We work across Northern Virginia, DC, and the surrounding counties in Maryland. Our vision is to empower people to ride bikes, build connections, and transform places. Now, more than 50 years later, we have a long list of accomplishments and a growing base of more than 20,000 supporters. So some of the ways that WABA can help you as community members includes work on the ground. So getting out for a fun ride. Sometimes we're also looking at folks who are not feeling confident yet. So we offer education for kids and adults, from learn to ride classes to confident city cycling to trail riding and more. We share lots of different resources for supports like setting up a bike bus at your school or how to request bike parking. We host rides, we offer volunteering opportunities, and we also work to win changes for safer streets, more trails, policy changes, funding, and more. So today, as we hear, there are folks across the country working to make your workplaces more bike friendly. And we just want to make a plug to also think about how contributing to the bike culture in your community also helps advance that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Callie. Okay, now I can invite all of our speakers back on the screen, and attendees, if you have any questions, please do feel free to put those in the Q&A box. We've gotten one so far, which we answered via text, but just to touch on it verbally, I guess, the question was about an employer that has EV charging facilities, but explicitly bans e-bike and scooter charging due in part to safety concerns. How can those concerns be effectively addressed? So Ryan, you and I both put answers in the chat, but if you want to expand on that, just for posterity in the recording.
Yeah, I think, it's such a bummer when there's a safety concern like that and they just kind of do a blanket, nobody can charge here. But an easy way to kind of have that discussion or engage in that conversation is just to maybe propose some safety standards. Europe for a long time has had electric battery safety standards for imports, and you can kind of use those safety standards to also talk to your employer and be like, hey, if my bike meets these regulations that this whole continent has decided works for them, what can we go forward with that? And that's kind of an easy way to at least start the dialogue and say, like, maybe we shouldn't just do a blanket no electric batteries can be charged here, but instead put some sort of regulation on it.
Yeah, and I second all of that and put a link in the Q&A in response that hopefully all attendees can see both of those links. But that just as an example, the state of California passed a law last fall prohibiting any kind of landlord from prohibiting charging micromobility devices in their building. So that includes places like campus dorms at universities and employers for their employees, in addition to, sort of apartment buildings and condos and things like that. And the way that law was crafted is it specifically points to the several different sort of standards that have been set, like Ryan mentioned, the European one, and there's one in the US from a company called UL. So these standards are, established already. Bikes and e-bike charging and batteries are all being tested and certified. And so getting your employer to sort of recognize that these certifications are out there and that, safety, acknowledging the safety concerns can still happen while saying, okay, we know these ones are safe. We can accept these ones, even if ones that haven't been tested might be banned. So definitely recommend exploring that. And like I put in the chat, this is sort of a growing and evolving challenge that we're hearing from a lot of employers and campuses. So we are hoping to develop more resources on this. So stay tuned specifically for that employer and developer and property manager side of things. So yeah, thanks so much for the question. All right, and I see a new question has come in. So this person says, I'm in a rural state where a majority of the employees live more than 10 miles from the office. Any suggestions besides just lowering my expectations for more biking? Don't lower your expectations. So all four of us probably have some answers to this. So I'll start by just saying that for places where like Ryan said, the lift of getting people to commute by bike, it just feels too heavy. Focusing on other ways to encourage riding. Sometimes that's a social ride at lunchtime, starting an employee bike club where people can go out for 30 minutes every other week or so together or by themselves. Having an office bike where people can use that in town, maybe if their home is 10 miles away, but maybe some other destinations like wherever they're getting lunch, or if there are partners or others that your employees are having meetings with, having a fleet of bikes that could be checked out and used for those more local, shorter distance trips. So those are some ideas. Anybody else want to jump in with other answers?
Yeah, I think another thing is you can start small. It doesn't have to be every day of the week. You can start, encourage people to do it one day. One thing, if they're building up to that, might be if there's people who could drive them back. Like if they bike one way and then they can get a ride with their bike another way. So there may be a little bit of a coordination issue there. But I used to commute 9 miles by bike. And if e-bikes had been there around then, that would have changed the game, I think. Now I'm more like 5 miles, and the e-bike is just super great. So I don't know if that's a possibility for your employer or your area, but it really does help.
I'll also endorse e-bikes. That's a great option. However, the one of the companies I used to work for, we were in a rural situation where like the streets to get to the office were like 55, which you don't ever want to get like buzzed by a semi going 55 when you're on your bike. So the option we came up with at that employer was park and ride, which actually worked pretty well. So if you have like a reward structure in place where you're like, hey, if you ride X amount times per month, then you're like entered in to win this prize. In order to allow everybody to participate, you can offer folks to, drive their bike to this local parking lot where we know it's safe to commute into work, and then give them that option to do a park and ride. And they're still celebrating and participating in the culture. They're getting on their bikes, even if it's for a shorter distance. But it's allows them to participate and feel like they're a part of the culture, which I think is what everybody wants, is just to like feel like they're a part of it.
Thanks, Ryan. Other thing, conversation for rural employers is I run into the misconception that only is a dense bicycle friendly, which just isn't true. So sorry, you all froze for me for a second. So I just wanted to put a resource if you are trying to advocate for bike improvements in a rural community. The Rural Design Guide that FHWA put out a couple of years ago is just great to help people imagine what it might look like to change the infrastructure in a really rural setting in a way that feels safe and comfortable for people to ride their bikes. So, anybody else have anything to add to that one? Okay. Another person asked, do you know of public agencies who run bike or e-bike purchase programs for employees? Ryan, I thought you might have answers to this.
We have a bike transit subsidy, which can be used it's not going to cover a whole bike or an e-bike, but it at least a little token amount.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm currently slacking my e-bike rebate program person to see if they have an answer, because they are the ones that track the programs. But we do have like an active spreadsheet that tracks all the e-bike rebate programs across the country and kind of like showcases the benefits or the features of each program. So I'll grab that and then I'll share it as a response in the chat there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think those kinds of rebate programs are often sort of at the city level, not necessarily tied to an employer. So if your city has that, definitely take advantage of those. Like Denver is a really great example of a city that's had one for a while and sort of serving as a model for other cities around the country. And for employers, so several years ago, there used to be an IRS tax code that allowed employers to offer the bicycle commuter benefit, which allowed employers to offer sort of pre-tax benefits, financial benefits to people who biked to work the majority of days. It wasn't a lot of money. It definitely didn't cover the cost of a bike, like Caroline said, and that no longer exists, unfortunately, under our current tax code. But a lot of employers have sort of continued it regardless as just an employer incentive. So I don't have a list off the top of my head, but that is something I can easily look up because it's one of our questions on our bicycle friendly business application. So if you, the person who asked that, if you're looking for specific examples so that you can sort of take it to a decision maker at your workplace, feel free to shoot me an email and I can help you find some similar business types that already do something like that. Cool. Okay, we've got a couple more questions. Oh, Kelly, go ahead. Thanks.
I just wanted to throw out that this is not support for purchasing a bike, but I would also make a comment that there can be resources available for bike share programs to subsidize some of those programs for employees. So that could be something else for folks to look into based on your local region.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, the next question, this can also be for any of us. So to your knowledge, are there any documented incidents of threats to building security caused by bicycles entering buildings? A manager in my building wanted all bicycles to be part of a registered program because of unspecified threats to building security posed by bicycles. Have any such threats been more specifically articulated or documented to your knowledge? If so, how can we intelligently manage any such threats? If not, how to assuage managers and other stakeholders that bicycles do not pose threats? So I'd say the e-bike, like the charging concern is, you know, that's something I've heard more from like a liability standpoint. But the question, I think, predates that. I have also heard a lot of property managers that are worried about like scuffs on the walls and carpet deterioration from bike wheels, which I will be honest, I don't think there are any good evidence of that being a real concern. But on the flip side, I don't know that I have any good evidence for you to take to that property manager to say, look, there isn't any damage being done. So I don't know if other folks on the call have answers to that. Other than I would say, I could share once again, sort of sharing examples of other businesses that do allow bikes inside their workplaces, just to say, look, here are the thousands of bicycle friendly businesses across the country that allow bikes inside their workplaces, and they have not seen any safety threats or other damage concerns as a result of those policies.
Yeah, I would just say where, you know,
so that's the thing I think I could offer you.
The State Department has a lot of threats all the time, and we have bikes in our building. So I have actually had this exact same conversation, and so then I was like, well, are you gonna stop cars from coming in? You know, it doesn't really make any sense to suddenly block bikes if you're gonna have cars in the vicinity, either in the building or, and you know, so there sometimes people just get something in their mind and it's a myth busting thing. So like I just had to walk this person through the logic a little bit. But yeah, in case it helps, you know, national security agencies, intelligence community, you know, all these people have bikes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got time for one last question. Companies selection. Yeah, I would say looking at the infrastructure in your community and finding the locations, the parts of town that have the most bike infrastructure. Also doing some surveying of your employees to find out, you know, what zip codes they live in, to figure out what is going to be most centrally located and the shortest distance for the most people. Those are some of the things we've seen BFBs do when they're able to move work site locations. Anybody else have anything to add to that one?
I think that's a great response. I think finding the most connected network is to just expand on Millie's response, I feel like the most connected network is important for equity purposes. A lot of times putting it in the neighborhoods where there's the most people that could reach it doesn't mean it's the most connected. So just trying to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to choose that as a
Yeah.
selection.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and then buildings that already have things like showers and lockers and bike parking can also be good reasons to move to certain places and not others, or policies allowing bikes, etc. Okay, I see that we are at 5 o'clock, which puts us at the hour. So I want to once again thank all of our attendees and a huge thanks to our speakers. I really enjoyed your presentations and learned a lot, and loved having this conversation with you all. So thank you again for celebrating National Bike Month and Bike to Work Week with us. And those on the call watching, we hope that you found some sources of inspiration today that can improve your workplace, and feel free to reach out to any of us with any follow-up questions afterwards. Thanks a lot all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.